Okay, so the next section, I guess what do they call this? Like the add-on, the bonus feature, the bonus,
Addendum.
yeah, the bonus of the podcast, the addendum.
Bonus
Um,
content.
Something I post, yeah, bonus content. There you go. So
Subscribers only.
I posted about this on the Off Performance Training Instagram last week and Facebook. Um, just discussing like basically because I'd seen some people sharing, and I've seen it on Twitter as well, of people sharing Connor McDavid's training videos at home. And for people who don't know who Connor McDavid is, he's a forward for the Edmonton Oilers. He plays hockey in the NHL, and he's probably undisputably the best hockey player in the world right now. Um, and anyway, so when you watch his training videos of him doing specifically like air squats, a lot of people in the fitness community may think that they're embarrassing, or they're performed very poorly. And so I guess the one thing I would ask is like, this always comes down to the context. Is like, why does it matter for Connor McDavid to perform air squats properly, or does it matter for him to perform air squats properly? And then connecting training, whatever training is for Connor, to being the best player in the world. Okay, so one is like, why does he need to even care about doing air squats the way that we do them, right, and the way that are proper? And trying to always keep in mind that he is the best player in the world.
So when I'm working with, say, youth athletes who are very specialized in their sport, I generally try to justify non-specific training to help fortify them against injury.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically, if they're not strong in positions that are not in use specifically in their sport, then when they're forced in that position by like getting rammed into the boards or losing their edge and slamming into the boards or something like that, that their body isn't prepared to handle that load in that scenario. So if they are unprepared for that and they end up injured because of it, then they lose ice time and they lose their potential progression in their sport. So that's a case for being able to do movements that are full range of motion and gain strength in those positions outside of their sport.
Yeah, I guess I don't disagree with you at all on that. The one thing I would say is that, like, I guess you would assume he does lunging and he does that type of stuff and he does step ups and different variations. It just wasn't videoed. But to me, the main point is that it was just his instinct to do air squats in a very shortened range of motion. And for people that didn't see the video, he's just doing air squats, so like what we would probably call quarter squats or half squats. And he was just pulsing up and down, and he was calling them squats because that's what he was doing for his home workout.
I actually have a question. So, like, I think a lot of people will, well, maybe not a lot, but some people have this question too, is like, so if his squat is terrible, or if you look at LeBron's, he's loading it and it looks bad. Do you still continue to train it or try to train it or work to trying to get like a better squat? Like, I have an idea of what I would do, but just curious about what you guys would do. Like, would you say like, oh, let's regress LeBron to only doing box squats because he could probably do that like better than arching his back the way he was and getting to the depth he was, that kind of thing?
I would say, how important is that movement in a sport?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What scenario are you applying it in? Are you applying it in a sport-specific training environment, or are you adding it in, like Jason said, to try and mitigate the injury, the opportunity for injury? If it's not that important in their performance in their sport, I like in the example of Connor McDavid, I can almost guarantee that he's better in single leg positions than anyone that we've ever encountered in our life.
Right.
In terms of single leg, split squat, whatever you want to call it, strength, positions, power, ability, movement out of those positions, his ability to load, to amortize, to, all of those things that are so important in his sport and that make him the world's best in his sport. he's going to be far superior in those movements than anyone we've ever encountered. And the air squat plays such a small role in that performance that it's just probably negligible, right? So
Right.
why even address it unless there's some sort of underlying issue that may lead to injury down the road? That would be my opinion.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So for someone like, okay, so he does play hockey, and notoriously hockey people, they generally are very good at single leg stuff. So yeah, that is the case. But for someone like LeBron, per se, right? Like, how would you address that? Like, looking at what he's doing, like, do you say, like, why is the trainer even bothering giving him that? Why just take it out altogether?
Well, that's what I would say. I was like, well, one, why are you doing it? And two, and if you're going to be doing it and doing it in any sort of volume in your training program, we need to address it, because if you see the video, it doesn't look good. So if you're going to be doing it and it's going to be a staple in your program, at least for a period of time, do it right. But if it's just something that was kind of thrown in,
right.
variety,
we have no idea, but
then
so like the first thing you'd probably say is you'd try for someone like LeBron and his anthropometric, you would probably want to put the load in front of his body, right? Given how long his femurs are, and you probably want to have him squat to a target and this type of stuff. But then you also go back to the basics of, like, what are you doing it for? What's the point? Are you doing it as a way to try to just maintain, or as like injury mitigation, is what Jason was mentioning earlier, or are you thinking it's going to give him some type of performance advancement, or, which I think is the main one, LeBron thinks it's good for him.
Right.
LeBron thinks it's good for him to do back squats, and he posts a video of it, and he obviously thinks it adds to his ability. And that's ultimately what matters, is that he thinks it matters. You just want to have the training be effective, as well as it actually matters to the athlete. You put those two things together, then it's really good. But then one little thought experiment we would go is, okay, so let's say Connor McDavid never heard of squatting his entire life. Is he still the best player in the NHL right now? Yes, he is. That's one way to answer the question. Is like, he'll still end up being the best player in the NHL, even if he doesn't know what a damn squat is, because it's not important. But it could be used in a way to try to, again, protect him from injuries. But the idea that LeBron James needs to be doing back squatting, or squatting in general, and that Connor McDavid needs to be doing squatting to stay where they are in their sports, to me is just a bit, it's just incorrect or incomplete of an answer.
Yeah. I think that certain coaches too, they just put overemphasis on movements, and like squatting is definitely one of them.
Because you just think about it from an actual, like, if the goal is to, obviously with jumping, like the quadriceps are massively important with jumping, and obviously absorbing loading and protecting the knee. So the obvious question would be, why isn't LeBron just doing step ups? Like, for his size, like, why isn't he just doing step ups? Because you can train the knee how you want it, at the angles you want it. And to me, it would be much more effective. But again, it just goes back to the idea that what matters, like, as long as LeBron thinks back squats are good for him, he'll be braining threes.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the other bonus section, the second bonus section of the podcast will be something I posted about it a while ago as well. I can't remember if I posted it as a post or as on my stories, but it's about this idea of RPE, or rate of perceived exertion, and anticipation of basically a future RPE and future efforts. And you think of it in two things. So think of like your rating of effort, how hard you feel like you're working. Classic rating of effort is a 6 to 20 Borg scale, and if you go look at it, there'll be lots of descriptions of what each number along the scale works like. Suffice to say, a 6 out of 20 score, or conversely a 1 out of 10 score, is basically you sitting here just chatting. 10 out of 10 or 20 out of 20 is basically you are maxed out effort wise, and you will do anything to have this to be done right now. So that's effort. And you can also do that with in terms of like muscular fatigue, specifically with muscular fatigue. So the level of muscular fatigue you have in your quadriceps right now is very low. if you ran out your door and you live next to a big hill and you sprinted up the hill for 5 minutes as fast as you could, after a couple minutes, you're going to be at almost max effort in terms of what you would rate your quadricep fatigue at, because it's going to be massive, especially if you're Matt Brady. So the reason I discuss this is that it's a common thing when designing specific running for people. Now that there's less options for people to train, you would want people to start if you want to try to find ways to provide another outlet for them to improve their fitness. Running is a viable option for that. But one of the main characteristics of running, which makes it separate from skier, rowing, air bike, is you can't just jump on and do whatever. So we just really make this simple. If you replace the marathon row at the CrossFit Games in 2018 with a marathon run, you don't even have Friday, Saturday, Sunday at the CrossFit Games, because these athletes are absolutely decimated. You can't just do a marathon run on the drop of a hat, because I'm not joking. I speak from experience. Your legs will be there'll be nothing left to your lower body. And not like, man, they're tired and you get up the next day. Like, man, they're tired and you cannot walk for 2, 3, 4, 5 days. And not even that they're sore, they don't function. They don't work. So that's the difference in loading. And it's just basic stuff. Of course, more tangents, just more simple ideas as to why, on average, the top end endurance athletes, runners, will likely do half the amount of time in training as a cyclist would do, just for the simple idea it's the amount of load being absorbed to the legs. Okay. So getting back to the idea of, so people are going to start running. And one of the, one simple way to do this is you have people do run, walk, or whatever. And then as you get them up to 20 minutes of continuous work, 30 minutes continuous work, I usually provide just saying, I want them to start by just running easy and what feels comfortable and easy to them, and emphasizing easy, because I don't really have an idea. And then normally they don't have heart rate monitors. We don't know what their max heart rate is. And we also have no metrics really for what duration, what they're how fast their best 30-minute time is, or what their pace is. So just give them the idea of run slow for 20 minutes. But the common thing that happens is say a few, early in it, if they do 20 minutes of running easy, let's just pick a number. They say that they ran, and let's just use a girl. They ran at 5 minutes and 30 minutes, 5 minutes, 30 seconds per kilometer for 30 minutes, and it felt easy, or 20 minutes, and it felt really easy. And to me, I know that that's too fast, because I know for them, if I ask them to run that for 60 minutes, they're going to go from saying, wow, that was really easy, to the last 10 minutes were extremely hard. And so if I just said, okay, I want you to run 60 minutes easy, or let's just say they take that same pace, they're going to think that 5 minutes, 30 seconds is really easy. But it's the idea of their inability to anticipate future RPE due to the lack of experience in running. And so it's always just an interesting, I guess I'm not really trying to make a point here. I'm just trying to say that I find it interesting that I see this commonly happen, is that these individuals run these durations as what they would consider really easy, say 20, 30 minutes, and you just double that duration, and that will become extremely hard for them for that second, that if you just add on the time, even though they're running what they perceive as being easy. So obviously if their body's not used to running that duration, if they're not used to that many steps, that much distance, of course, that's going to factor in. But the part to me that always seems interesting is their inability to anticipate what the appropriate pace should be, simply from their lack of experience in doing it, because it is a novel scenario for them, right? So if I'm asking them to run, and just to go back to the same example, they run that 20 minutes and they self-select the pace of 5 minutes and 30 seconds per kilometer, and it feels really easy. And then a couple weeks later, I have someone run a 10-kilometer time trial because they'd worked up to running they've worked up to running enough volume, and I want to have some metric for them. So I was like, okay, you're okay to run this duration. Let's just see, let's see how fast you can do it. And it was just under 50 minutes. So it works out to 5 minutes per kilometer. So if you know anything about running, 30-second spread between your fastest pace for 50 minutes or 10 kilometers and 5 minutes and 30 seconds is that's a very small spread in time. 30 seconds per kilometer is a very, very tight pacing in terms of disparity. Just use an example for myself. My best 10-kilometer pace would be like 4 minutes 15 seconds per kilometer, and my training pace for easy would be 6 minutes per kilometer. So that's the spread in it. And what I'm saying is that the difference to myself and this individual is due to my experience with running, my ability to anticipate and project effort levels in the future are far superior. But it's a common thing where if I leave it up to the athlete to run, the common scenarios, their anticipated easy is much harder than what they think it is. And they don't know because they haven't done the durations before. And you only really see it once you have them do a test. And you would see, okay, this is their actual best effort, and it's not much faster than what they think is easy.
So what do you do to try to get them to slow down?
You have to tell them to slow down. And try to explain it to people. But even a lot of people still don't believe it. They just don't get it. They're like, I need you to go slower. They're like, yeah, but it feels easy. It's like, yes.
So what do you tell those people though? Like why you want them to run easy? Like what's that message?
Well, I don't tell them the reasoning why. Like I don't tell them I want them running in a zone 1 effort. Like I'm not telling them that. I just tell them I want you to run at this pace. Like I don't explain to them the rationale of I want you training longer duration in low lactate environments. I don't explain it to them. And high levels of quadricep oxygen saturation and low heart rates. Because I don't know that there's any use in that. I just go, okay, I want you to do this pace and tell me what your heart rate was. And then I get back from there and go, okay, it's 20-year-old girl. She was at like 150 beats per minute. All right, it's probably roughly around 75% of her max heart rate, probably around there. Okay, cool. Versus if you let them self-select it, they're running 80-85% of their max heart rate and they don't even know. But again, the idea being they run that heart rate for 20 minutes and their inability to anticipate what their effort levels will be 30 or 40 minutes down the road is what I always find very interesting. Right. And then you put them in a CrossFit scenario. And then like, obviously you would do this with a beginner. You put a beginner into a CrossFit scenario and have them do, 21, 15, 9 of like rowing, thrusters, and burpees. Someone who's a beginner, their idea of what their effort level should be to start is going to be way too high. Someone who's never done this before, like their ability to anticipate what their effort levels will become and what their levels of muscular fatigue will become is very poor. So like you can think of the scenario when you're coaching someone through a workout like that and like literally being their brain and telling them when to stop, when to slow down, take a break, do 3 reps, break. And they're like, why should I do 3 reps? Like, well, because when you get to the round of 9, you're going to be happy you listened to me, because even though you don't understand it, your effort level is going to do this, even though I'm slowing you down. You don't understand it. What I'm saying is that what I'm saying, I just find very interesting is experienced CrossFit athletes and their inability to project effort at 60 minutes, even though they've done 20 in specifically running. I always find that very interesting. Any thoughts on that?
I think it would extend outside of just running, because not very many people.
I don't know about that.
But how many CrossFit workouts extend to 60 minutes?
Oh no, so yeah, it got nothing to do with that. I just mean like they're but I would just go back to it and go, okay, well, if you just took a common workout and you made it longer, they would still figure it out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
like they would probably be able to make sense of it. Even though it is somewhat novel, but it is more familiar to them than running a half marathon. I would almost guarantee you, if you told the average CrossFit athlete to go run a half marathon, they're going to start at a pace that's probably 30 seconds to a minute faster per kilometer than what they're going to average out at.
So what's the novelty then?
Well, like again, the half marathon might not be the best example because it's long enough to incur enough muscular damage and enough like strain on the system that you're going to run into actual problems as opposed to like a pacing problem. But again, I just find that that scenario, which constantly happens, very, very interesting to me, and I just want to hear someone else's thoughts on it.
I mean, I just think that people undervalue easy work, honestly. I just think that's always what it comes down to. They always think like, I need to be trying hard. I need to be killing myself.
Yeah.
And that's not always the case.
Mm-hmm.
So.
But I think like, you take a scenario, like a specific CrossFit scenario. So someone on a rower comfortably rows at 1,200 calories an hour for, I don't know, 100 cals. And they can do that.
Basically a guy. Yeah.
Like and that feels relatively easy. So now you have them in a 20-minute AMRAP scenario where they have 20 cals in the rower, 15 step-down box jumps or box jump overs, and then 10 devil's press. Some of those people are still going to try and row that at 1,200 cals an hour the whole time.
Yeah.
Right? And it takes the coach to be, and not just beginners, but I mean like intermediate level CrossFit athletes. And it takes the coach specifically being there telling them, you need to slow down on the rower. And they're, 4 minutes in and they're like, well, I feel fine. And then 7 minutes in, they're like sucking air laying on the ground in between devil's press. You know what I mean? So I feel like I get what you're saying in regards to the row and the running, but I don't think it's necessarily just specific to the running. But that's my opinion.
I think that's the whole idea of training, is to give people proper experience so they can start to project a little bit further into the future. Like, it's not, because it is, if it's completely novel, you don't even know what it's going to feel like in 10 minutes, let alone 60. But as you start building up to 10 minutes, you're like, okay, well, now I have the experience up to this much. Now I can kind of project a little further. So maybe even it's the psychological preparedness, is that I'm going to go slow because I know this is going to hurt. Mm-hmm. And it's, I mean, I think that might be the entire purpose of training for fitness, and fitness extending out to running as well. So
yeah, I think what Tom said is right, where people with what they do with easy work is just undervalued, and they don't do it correctly. And I'm not sure if it's just an ego thing where people can't just do it properly. If you're going to do it, just I always say just do it right. I came up with that. And then with Scott, like people being unable to anticipate it or be able to project what their paces are going to be. Again, I do see your point on that. I do agree with you that people are, if it's a specifically novel scenario of like 20 calorie row, devil's press, whatever, for 20 minutes. But then when you just think of it just being the one modality, right? So you don't have to monitor effort through different modalities and an overall effort. You just have to monitor how you're feeling in this one modality that you're just doing over and over. But I would still say, yeah, I think if you just use the example of someone starting out on a rower, if you said, I want you to row really easy, like, I bet that their easy pace would still end up being hard if you make them go for an hour. Like, it'll be like, this is really hard. You're like, I know, because you don't understand what easy is. And it's a good, like, if someone, and if you just extend it out even longer, and let's say they're incapable of doing it, you just extend it out really long and make it 3 hours. I would almost guarantee the pace that they think is easy for their 5-minute row is faster than their 3-hour PR pace. I would almost bet that for a lot of people. They would be down, like for the average girl, they'd probably be down to rowing 220, 225 for 3 hours. And they'd be like, what? And you're like, mm-hmm. But it just goes back to the idea of like like as you extend out the duration. So I guess we can make it more across the board examples. As you extend out the duration of time, people's inexperience in that duration lends for very, very poor anticipation of future effort levels, even though you may think what's going to occur, or you may think that you're going to understand, you're going to do it well. Experience is always the best teacher, but I always just find this scenario comes up over and over and over with running. And I was just wondering if you guys saw this happen before.
Oh yeah. I mean, I have clients that haven't really been running much, and then now they have nothing to do. So it's like, well, now you're going to run. And the first time, like it was 20 minutes, that's it. And immediately she goes, I died halfway through the run. And it was like, well, do you think you just ran too fast? And it's like, yep, of course. But I think they learn pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's just, anyway. I just find it interesting. It's why you go back to the basics of when you prescribe snatching, clean and jerk, squatting. If you know people well, you try to give them ideas on loading. You try to give them ideas on rest times. You try to provide the details for them because you're trying to control the training stimulus. Lots of times with running, there are no details. It's just, I want you to run. I want you to do this. And most people are like, what you're asking them to do is you're asking them to do front squats with really, really low weight, and they're front squatting at 80% of their max, and they think this is easy. You're like, no, like you don't get it. So it goes back to the coach being the onus of trying to control the variables and use the details and make sense of the program to the most effective rate. Anyway, that's a little sidebar, and I'm not sure if anyone will find that interesting.